parent education stuff. And so the Sharks are making a difference.
Well, that's why we're here. Hi, Brent. Good to see you. Brent's joined us. He did a presentation with us a number of weeks ago, and on inclusion in sports. A former major junior hockey player who's sort of a leader in his area. And I've observed his daughter play on the midget AA team and really enjoy watching with Jordan. So we'll see in the rink, Brent. I looked for you at the last one. You weren't there, but we'll certainly try to find you. I try to get to every one of Jordan's games.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Yeah, it was pretty good to be back in the rinks again, and what an honor to present to the Sharks. And it's definitely something that's needed in sports, is just more training around sports diversity and inclusion. Just listing off a checkbox of things that we may not have known, and just daily reminders for coaches and parents. So it was pretty cool. But thanks. I'm just kind of going to listen in, and then I just need to get my hockey fix today and learn more.
Okay, well, I just talked to Bruce Wheaton, who's going to be our guest today. And hell, he's a perfect guest for, I would say, U10 and under coaches, because the books he's written on developing youth leaders and developing parent leaders to accomplish life's goals and sports goals. It's everything he has focused on, but he's sort of gotten away from now and turned it over to Alan Andrews and his hockey growth system. So the CDs and books are available through Andrews Hockey Growth. And it's Bruce Beaton's resources, a couple books, a number of CDs. I purchased 6 of them when I worked in the Cochrane area with a hockey association. And I gave them to coaches to listen to. And when they were done listening to the series, they gave them back to me, and I would pass them on to another coach. But I find that one of the best ways to learn is listen to these presentations online while you're driving. I don't know, Brent, have you ever done that? Have you ever put up listened to one of our shows just while you drove?
Actually, yeah, I have. That's kind of the thing that I like to do now, is listen to podcasts, or whenever I get a spare 20 minutes.
Yeah.
If something pops up on LinkedIn, I just heard another cool podcast from LinkedIn where they're talking about mental health through Stacey Myers. So I think, that's pretty cool if they're accessible and they give you a little bit of time. I think that sweet spot's about 15-20 minutes, to where it's long enough, but enough information.
But you're able to listen to that through your phone and on your speaker in your car?
Yeah, you could just Bluetooth it in.
Yeah.
You go, a lot of live streams or podcasts.
Yeah.
And it's pretty mainstream now, where the like Team Roping World or Rodeo World, they have a lot of podcasts where I like to learn from professionals, and they download their thoughts or their training programs. So it's pretty accessible.
Okay, Michael, welcome to the group. The numbers usually vary. Michael, I sent you a link from Daryl Belfry when he was talking about what he learned and from his minor hockey coaching and what he would do differently. Were you able to look at that? Your speaker working, Mike?
Are you talking to me, Mike Benelli?
No, I'm talking to, pardon me. That's my brain. Bruce
I got all your stuff, so I open every one of it.
Okay. Bruce, are you on? I sent him a link
Yep.
and he might rejoin us, but anyway, Brent's on today and I'll talk a little bit about Bruce's work and we'll see if he can get on with us and speak to us. So Bruce, I can see your face, but we'd sure like to hear your voice and this time through. And if we can't get on now, Sammy Joe is going to be joining in an hour or so, and she'll certainly be able to work on helping us. Are you with us, Bruce?
I can hear you.
We hear
Yeah,
you now. You're
we
with
see-
us.
Yeah, we see you too. You're on.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Good. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody. And Bruce, my question to you was I wanted you to get familiar with the nature of our group. And so I sent you the link with Daryl Belfry where he talked about his minor hockey coaching experience and what he would change and do differently. He was quite frankly embarrassed. And I thought it dovetailed with the private conversations you and I had. Were you able to listen to that presentation?
No, I didn't get a chance, Wally.
Okay, well, I really recommend you do that, Bruce, because when you do, you'll appreciate that where this group comes from. You'll have an idea of your audience and what it's here. And quite frankly, we're here to serve the good of the game, Bruce. That's my mantra on my emails. So everything that we talk about eventually gets down to ethical coaching, good parenting, and good leading, which seems to be lacking and through nobody's fault. I think it's just a lack of keeping up with the times and working on communication skills, being able to lead. Bruce, I'm really glad you're on today. I'm just going to give you a quick, let everybody do a quick 1 minute introduction for you. And then I'm going to briefly introduce you and let you go. So Mike Benelli, would you start and then just call out the next name? Hockey Solutions Architect, I believe. Go ahead.
And I got a good title. I'm trying to find out ways to make money from the title, but so Mike Benelli, I'm here in New York. I do a little work with USA Hockey on the coaching education program and with the national program. And that's basically all volunteer at this point. And then on my real job, I work with organizations around the world now, just developing and building programming so that they can retain, train, keep coaches, players, and parents happy. So it's a basically work with the youth hockey levels, and then I train bunch of pro kids and semi-pro kids in the summer and the spring. So definitely all pretty much all hockey all year round.
Tom Malloy.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Tom Malloy. Right now I'm coaching a under 13 girls team, and I decided to help my son. I've been coaching college for like 1,000 years, and other stuff. So, anyways, I needed a female coach, and I needed someone to kind of watch the D, and preferably a parent. So I asked for volunteers, and Cassie Campbell said she'd help. So I got kind of the top women in the world, and she's been fantastic. Last night, we play a lot of games. She plays all the games with the kids. So I'm pretty excited about that because I love coaching with my son and, getting used to coaching this age, seeing what they need. And so anyways, that's who I am.
Brent Dodging Horse.
Brent Dodgenhorst, a former hockey player in the Western League and a little bit of pro. Right now, I'm a council member of the Tsuut'ina Nation, but on the side, we have the DH Ranch, and we run DH Ranch, which is based around equine-assisted learning, but we also do Indigenous 101 and diversity training. I advise and I help out the Western Hockey League, and we do diversity training. I also am very lucky to be working with the Calgary Flames in CSEC, and I do their diversity and inclusion training, and also get subcontracted to do some other work for corporate organizations around diversity inclusion. So, but that's me.
Thanks, Brett. Hal Terse.
Hi, good morning. Hal Turst, Minnesota hockey. Coached college all the way to Squirts over the last 50 years. I'm coaching a Bantam team this year. We're just starting getting going. And 20-some years of working in the USA Hockey Coach Education and Development Program.
Jordan Fenton.
I'm a U18 female hockey coach in Calgary. And also in my day job, I am a principal of an elementary school. And so I'm passionate about education and hockey and keeping the two things going together. And this is a great group to learn from every week. And I also say, Bruce, that I'm a CFL hockey or CFL fan, and remember the days when you were out west here.
Al Ramsey. Welcome, Al. And I'm going to ask you to introduce Bruce because you know him. Go ahead.
Hey, Wally, thank you. So I'm a 10U coach down in Massachusetts, originally from PEI, and I'm a hockey director at a volunteer association as well down here. I've had a chance to hear Bruce a couple of times at Allen Andrews Hockey School. I don't know if we've actually met Bruce, but I've definitely sat in on some of your parent presentations that you've done as part of the hockey school there, and really enjoyed it. We actually have one of your CDs too. I think it's called How Stars Are Made. It's almost like a kid's book that is one of my son's favorite things to listen to on the way to the rink. So it kind of sits in my truck, and he listens to that. He kind of knows the stories off by heart. I'll have number 7 today, story number 7. So anyway, we've gotten a lot of that. So I appreciate some of the stuff that you've done, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say here today.
Bruce, before I introduce you, I purchased 6 sets of your CDs and give them to coaches. And when they're done, they bring them back to me and I pass them on to another coach. And I think they're tremendous, Bruce. The work you've done, this group in particular, this audience that you're going to talk to today appreciates everything you're doing. And we've been there, done that. We've been through what you've felt and experienced. And we're on the same wavelength. So I had a good opportunity to talk to Bruce the other day and Skype for an hour, and boy, we could have talked for 3 hours. He's got more stories to tell, but how a guy got playing football as a walk-on at university, ended up going to Edmonton and spending a better part of his athletic life involved in sports. Then when he had kids and got involved in minor hockey, he saw the dilemma that we are aware of, and he wants to make a difference. Now, Bruce is I believe, Bruce, you've handed over the tools, your resources, the books, and the CDs to Alan Andrews at Andrews Hockey Growth, and people can access them through there by Googling Andrews Hockey Growth. But I just think they were ahead of the time then, and unfortunately, Bruce, they're still ahead of the time. So that's why we have these meetings, and that's why I'm excited to have you on today. So tell us a bit about yourself, what you got into back in the day, and a little bit about yourself today, but you take over and questions will come with hands up. Now, Tom, you've got your hand up here. Did you want to say something?
I never took it down, sorry.
Oh,
I'm not that quick.
that's from last time?
Yeah.
Okay.
How to get it down.
Bruce, go ahead.
Okay, well, I guess what I would lead with was I got asked to try out for football team in college, and from there, it was this process where I tried to develop myself as fast as I could. You're kind of in this race against time. And then I had my first NFL tryout 9 years later. So, and I still had things to learn. So it was like my perspective on development would be that efficiency is really important. Like it's kind of a race against time, and you have limited resources from the sense that you only have so much energy and so much I guess your kind of your limited resources are time and energy. So the things that you do in terms of training have to be the right things. And then even more importantly, the things that you learn from a neurological standpoint, I guess what we'd loosely call techniques or skills, have to be the right, they have to be done correctly. Otherwise you're wasting two of your most limited resources, which are time and energy. And that's really what development is to me. It's a race, what I guess what Marty St. Louis calls be the best at getting better. And to me, there's a piece of that that goes far beyond self-discipline and hard work. And that's kind of the piece that I did the most work on in order to become a really good player. And what really helped me was getting a bit of a background in martial arts and realizing that, here's this super efficient, 3,000-year-old art that, like, they operate at a level of efficiency in terms of neural training that we haven't even begun to approach in team sport, and not just in football, because I see the same things in hockey. Like I'll see really really high level hockey programs, and I look at their daily development tools, and half the time there's none, even though, I mean, some of these guys are still in their early 20s. It's like development has stopped, or it's like just a little bit of slopping around on the ice, doing flow drills or whacking a few one-timers at the end of practice from somewhere you're never going to shoot the puck, is like becomes development. So I'm really interested in that sort of level of efficiency. And then hockey's got its really unique things that I don't think a lot of progress has been made in terms of some of the things, especially offensively, or some of the line combination work. I think there's still a lot. There's a lot of development there that could be occurred when you look at it from the perspective of really understanding high-end football development. Like the unique thing about football is that the individual jobs are really well segmented, really well measured, and they're really well coached, particularly at the highest levels. So when I look at hockey, for example, hockey players, because it's a flow sport, you typically, with the puck basically transitioning from one team to the other, less than 5 seconds, and a lot of moving parts at all time, you're kind of switching continuously between a number of different roles as a player. And if I was to sort of label those roles using football terms, I would say, like, very often the puck handler, the easiest comparison for that person in football would be an athletic running quarterback, where you have an opportunity to move, you're going to get pressure, and you've got to make quick. In football, they're called pre-snap reads, but in hockey, they're reading things before you get the puck, then knowing there's going to be pressure, having a decent understanding of where that pressure is going to come from, and then understanding, where your outlets are in terms of, and then having to deliver a really highly effective pass. And so there's that would be one role. Another role would be, let's say the person that's pressuring the puck, and that role typically in football, to me, it's kind of like a press corner, or someone who's like close, like you're almost a one-on-one defender, right? And then there's the defensive roles away from the puck, and that's where you're more into like kind of like safety play, where you're reading 3 or 4 players in front of you. They're at a little bit of a distance, and you're covering and you're supporting. And so when you look at how those jobs are coached in football and how clearly they're coached, I find a lot of times in hockey, and there's one other position, obviously, the players on offense around the person with the puck play a very similar role to receivers, where there's receiver routes that give you a great chance of success. There's spacing, and then there's sort of like what happens once the initial read breaks down in football, or what is used to be called a broken play, but now it's looked at as phase 2 of an extended play as the game moves more and more toward quarterbacks with movement skills, which really aligns it with hockey, because every time you touch the puck, obviously it's a player with movement skills, who's also predominantly a passer. So I kind of look at those, and it's really interesting that there's, to me, there's a lot of room for growth in hockey from the perspective of teaching those jobs, and more importantly, teaching kids to transition from role to role to role. And I feel like once people understand their role and can read their next role really quickly, then they can be moving, and they've got purpose, and they've got, and that it's very, very similar, again, like I said, to football, where if you don't quite understand what you're doing, if you don't quite understand your role, if you don't quite understand decision making in down to like where it's really wrapped in myelin, and you're doing things unconsciously, then you're going to play slow. And what I see in hockey at the lower levels is, in at least 2 of those 3 phases, players play really slow. And very infrequently are they taught what their role is and how to, and that's the biggest challenge in hockey is teaching those multiple roles so that you have effective team play. And then the step beyond that is refining those roles so that there's a collective understanding between players and effective spacing and timing between players, so that you can run highly effective offense based on the studies on analytics on the 4 to 5 ways that goals are consistently scored at a high percentage. So that kind of stuff is very interesting to me. And I did some really cool work with a bright junior A coach, and really got outstanding results in 1 year. We also combined that. I'll get to you in a sec, Tom. We also combine that with once players understand the roles, and then you do a skills breakdown of what's required in the roles. Then you test those kids on how effectively they can do each of those skills. And then you build a training program for each person. And so they have, besides their team practice, they have an individualized practice in addition to their regular practice. So, and we went back to back. So we went the individual skills practice, which then, this is something I went through in football, aligns really well with, even though you're working on individual skills, very often they're best worked on in group settings with 1 to 4 or 5 other players. So there's ways we created a really efficient individualized program for each player, grouped them with other players, and then built a circuit, and then built strong fundamental skating work that all players should do within that circuit. Most of that was Alan Andrews type skating techniques. And then from there, we had a lot of success sort of aligning fundamentals with individualized stuff, and then that fit directly within the offense and role transition so that's kind of how we.
Michael, I'd like to interrupt because the group, we're very familiar with everything you've said and doing those kinds of things, not in the detail. Brad's been on, and Tom Malloy had his hand up, and I just want to mention, I am a skills guy. I understand your idea of developing skills and the importance of proper practice and repetition to develop good habits and performance. Tom is a hockey IQ guy, developing decision making and thinking. And Tom has spent more time in the game around the world working with coaches that specialize both in skill development, but primarily in applying those skills in decision making in game situations. So I'm throwing this at you. Tom's philosophy, and I enjoyed your practice last night. It was a typical Tom Malloy practice, all kinds of repetition with game-like drills. And the theory he follows, Michael, is let the game teach. The next practice was a little different. The other coach, he was a deliberate practice guy. He did predetermined routes, predetermined repetition, key teaching points of fundamental skills, and he finished the practice with a game. So, Tom, I'm going to let you ask a question which might, give Bruce a sense of direction from your whatever you're going to say. Go ahead, Tom.
I just wanted to say to Bruce that you're totally in line with the Finnish Ice Hockey Federation. That's exactly, the 4 game playing roles that you talked about: the player with the puck, the player supporting the puck on offense, and on defense, the player checking the puck carrier, players covering away from the puck. And they also say that there's 3 different things that happen in hockey: you're either on offense, you're on defense, or hockey is different than other sports. 30% of the time, the puck is loose. So, very consistent with what you're saying. So I really like to hear what you're saying, because that's exactly, I've been to Finland like a dozen times and worked with them a lot. So I really like what you're saying.
Go ahead, Mike.
Bruce.
Go ahead, Bruce. And Bruce, I'm sorry, we have a guest. I'll just quickly get him to introduce himself. Not a guest, but a shark. Peter Whitney, are you with us?
I am. Just
Go
got,
ahead, Peter. Introduce yourself to Bruce.
Hi, Bruce. Everybody else. Fellas, good to see you again. The group. Coached. I'm coaching in Connecticut. I've done USA hockey things with Michael Benelli in the education program. I've coached from youth level all the way up to the NCAA. I've coached girls high school hockey, boys prep school, boys men's, I guess, club hockey. Just recently retired from coaching in the NCAA in an effort to keep my truck under 300,000 miles.
Okay. Go ahead, Bruce. It's all yours.
Well, again, I go back to practice design is important, of course, and practice philosophy and those types of things. But I just look at like understanding neural development, understanding the phases, and then understanding overall like how skills are developed neurologically is a lot like a farmer doing soil tests or understanding the climate they're in or understanding the plants they're planting, and like they're just, there's basic rules that you have to follow in order to efficiently develop skills and have those skills efficiently lead to winning. And I just feel like the disconnect is that from a myelin standpoint, there's a tiny little box you have to check that's just a math box that says how many aggressive reaching reps did I do, where I actually spent time learning this skill. And like I'll give you an example. Like I see kids, not kids, adults, working on one timers and working like it's like you understand defensive hockey and goalie positioning, a quiet eye, and there's just a place you have to put the puck, and you got about a third of the net. You don't have to aim for top 6 inches of the corner of the net. You got to, and this is one specific play, it's one specific one timer with one specific situation. And then if you're looking to score with something like that, then you should be able to put a player in that situation and then measure exactly how many times they put the puck in the most effective part of the net. And on a finishing play like that, there's an enormous difference between being 6 out of 10 and 9 out of 10. It's like, so I don't find that kind of stuff is built very well. I don't find like the reps don't coincide with the impact of that skill, and very often the wrong players are working on the wrong skills from the wrong places. It's a lot like basketball, from the sense that a good basketball player is going to learn to shoot the ball really effectively from one spot, and then you build you have to know you can do this from there, and then you can set that up offensively and whatnot. So I find that there's a disconnect generally in coaching between like what specifically works and then how many specific reps you're putting in on doing that specific skill, and then having an internal measure of how effective you are at that particular skill and whether you're improving at that particular skill or not. It's the big innovation in weight training is that you measure your progress, and I don't see specific skills being worked on, developed, and measured. Peter, how do I? Oh, you go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question there. You had said that players you feel like often work on the wrong skills. Does that mean like you're looking at a kid who you're saying, and I'm talking at the youth level here, you're looking at a player who perhaps shouldn't be working on one-timers because maybe their skating isn't what it should be, or their passing isn't what it should be? Is that kind of what you're saying?
No, the youth level, like you have to spend a huge amount of time on fundamentals, and I've never seen a sport with more fundamental skills that you have to work on than hockey. It's got to be up there with like polo, and it's like so there's so many skills, there's so much, that at the youth level, I don't think it's hard to lay out good fundamental practices where you teach everyone's got to learn everything. And I would say that the biggest impact, that the biggest way you could help people at the youth level is teach them role transition, like teach them besides working on a ton of fundamental skills, role transition. I'm talking about it when you hit the junior level, as you start to align specific, like, I'll back this up again. Like, my favorite football coach and the one I follow, like, really, really in depth is Bill Belichick, and he's incredibly poorly covered by the media, because generally the Boston media hate him because of how he treats them. So you get a really misinformed story about. But if you really dig deep on what he does, he's a really amazing thinker with 48 years of experience in the NFL alone. And he's innovating things again this year, where he's doing stuff that, but the way the fundamental difference, the way he thinks and the way a lot of other coaches think, is that he completely works backward from job descriptions. So he doesn't, everybody kind of sets up an organization with a head coach, offensive coordinator, defense coordinator, different coaches that do different things, different players that do different things. He really looks at the game in a different way. He looks at, what am I trying to do? And then how can I, and he reads one book a year because he's super busy. And so one of the books he read one year was just on how Jack Welch reconfigured GE, because it's this idea that you it's like if you were going to hire someone, and instead of saying, you just started to list everything you wanted that player to do, and then you start to list the attributes and physical and mental and characteristics, like their personality and their character and their physical characteristics that would help. But there would also be a skills inventory there, of course. And then there would be, and then you kind of build your program from what you need. So everything is built from, okay, if you look at analytics and you see these different ways of scoring, or if you look at the impact of transition, or if you look at your offensive systems or your defensive systems, or how you want to play the game, and then you build this idea of, boy, if we had this kind of guy in this spot, and if we had this kind of guy in this spot, and then it's built from what we want them to do. And then you start to look at what you want them to do, and you start to put a skills inventory together, and then you start to measure how effectively people do those skills. Like we were talking about a one-timer earlier, right? Where's your one-timer going to come? Let's say it's low to high and it's on the kind of half wall, lower corner, that kind of, like if you lined up a guy there and said, I want you to move, I want you to make a deceptive move, and then I want to know 10 reps, how many times you can either snap or feather a pass to hit that pylon where you're expecting that guy to be in a one-timer position. And I don't see anybody measuring that. And it's like, well, then, like, it's like saying, I want this quarterback to make this throw, right? But I'm never going to measure how effectively they make, how good are they at throwing a back shoulder fade? Well, in football, you need to know that, right? And so here's a finishing play that you spend all this time trying to get to the offensive zone. You do all your studying on flash screens or analytics about how to, how we want to set this up and how we want to. Nobody measures whether the guy can make that pass, because Andrews, they're right about passing is the most important. It's the most effective skill in hockey in terms of, because again, every time someone has the puck, if you think of them as a quarterback, if you think of them as a decision maker, if you think about someone that's going to face immediate pressure, it's how effectively they read and react, and then, so, but there's a skill associated with that. And then, so it's like you can run all the practices you want efficiently, and but until that guy can hit that pylon with that pass from an unstable base while he's moving or after a deceptive move, then you don't have a finishing play. And you need 3 to 4 finishing plays a game to win the game. They're exponentially important. Do you know what I mean? I don't see it. I don't see the skills being measured. I don't see a coach teaching a player, this is the skill. If you're
We're
going to
getting
be
some
that
stats
guy,
from
if you're going
somebody.
to be in that situation, and then let's find the limiting skill, let's work on it, and then let's create a program, because you tend to find yourself in that situation because of how I run my team, because of the role I'm asking you to play, because this is what we're trying to do. And there's 4 or 5 of those for every player on the ice. Every player on the ice. And if you can identify those and then build a program and then fit, okay, how much now we got 5 players on the team that actually need to work on that particular skill. Let's group them, let's make it competitive, let's make it a daily thing. Let's build that into our, and like I said, we built a kind of a 2 practice format with an ice cleaning in between, and it's, you can build a program if you understand the rules of development.
Bruce, I've got a point. Peter, in terms of your question, minor hockey, they're not going to one time it. They're just learning to skate with a puck. And I watched Tom Malloy's team practice. This is U13 girls going to play in a boys' league. They're elite girls for that boys' league. But nobody can skate with a puck with their head up, let alone make an accurate pass with deception to a person that's going to one time. So teaching of those fundamental skills, and Tom, I'm going to send out an email today about breakaway skating, because the other coach had a drill where they had a breakaway skate and everybody's puck got caught up in the feet. They didn't know how to get it in front of them. There's things that have to be taught, Bruce, and the average coach, minor hockey coach, struggles with the knowledge of teaching that. So that's the disconnect between how you get from one step to the other. When you inherit those players with Brad, junior A players, and Brad's worked with them for a year or two, fairly easy to step in and do these kinds of things for you. But we're not just average coaches. The people on this show are exceptional coaches, very good teachers, but that that to me is the hardest part to get across to the community of coaches, is those fundamentals are absolutely essential. So I just wanted to slip that in, that the next stage of development is sophisticated, taking it to the highest competitive level that you can. And I just wanted to bring that up. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm just trying to allude to the people who listen to this, which might be, it's a hockey audience that's quite well educated, I think would understand it. But their concern is, Peter is mentoring now. I'm mentoring now. We're all, Michael is mentoring now. So we're working with people to do what you're saying. And that's the hardest part of all. That's the biggest challenge.
I guess for me, I I don't I don't find it very challenging to, it's a philosophical thing for me, where I look at sport as an experiential activity. And so I do some volunteer work with some youth at risk at a school where we do career counseling. And so it's one of the things that you want to teach people is to think for themselves, that you need to make choices and start to, and it's really hard to get people, even when they're 17 or 18, to think for themselves. Someone's going to have the answers, or someone's going to give them a job, or someone's going to something's going to happen where you just react and you live your life. But the way you teach people to think for themselves in sport is they have to do a little bit of individual work that's collectively agreed on between you and them about, look, these 2 or 3 things, because of what we're asking you to do and because of your natural skill set, would exponentially increase your results. That's what, it doesn't matter if it's an individual or a business, or you're always looking at what 2 or 3 things could I do that would give me the most outstanding results? Because again, as a former athlete, your limiting factors are your time and your energy. So you can't practice for 4 or 5 hours a day. You got to be efficient in the little bit of time that you're going to spend with things. So so someone has to guide your thinking. Someone, if you're being effectively mentored, someone's telling you, okay, listen, here's a situation you could really help the team the most if you worked on these 2 or 3 things, and here's how I would work on them if I was you. And teach people those things. That's what I did for years as a player, just working with young guys. You teach them. You don't just teach them what they need to do. You teach them how to fix, or how to, you do 10 of these and 10 of these, and you have a discussion about why, and the different. But that's the martial arts thing about there's like an individual prescriptive program that'll get you from white belt to a black belt, and they can do that with a below average athlete in an extraordinarily short amount of time. And it's this idea that you do fundamental work as a group, but that these neural patterns are very learnable. And so a lot of times that I find there's, it's one thing to teach people self-defense training where it's very similar for each person, but hockey with its collective, like it's very unique roles, is similar to football, where people need an individual prescriptive program. They can do work with their group, but they're different than the other players.
Anybody got any other questions or thoughts related to this? And Bruce, what I took out of one of your CDs, you used the term myelin and habits. And can you talk a bit about that? Because that's sort of like developing good habits and techniques at the right age, and the age to teach that and learn that and be master that. When is it best?
Well, again, these are sort of like the rules of nature, and one of the things that coaching has a long history, like I said, just a little bit like martial arts does, in that people teach, but now that with science, you understand the reasons why things work a little better. And so understanding neurology helps you coach different kids at different ages, and helps you fit what fundamentals should be taught at what age to most efficiently help kids get better. So, but again, that's I don't know what that is, a 5 or 6 CD set. I mean, there's a lot to go into there if you really want to understand and not end up, planting your corn in the winter with a kid, where you're not going to have any success. Then you got to kind of know, a little neurology to be a great coach. And I'm sure you guys have all heard of myelin, and how that, you just basically wrap skills and insulation through reps, and reps and sleep, and that's why it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, right?
Bruce, when you did martial arts, what level did you go to, and when did you do that?
I did it when I was probably 2 years into the CFL. I got into it for an off season, and I don't recommend doing something like that, because again, you're limited and but I didn't stay with it any longer than a couple of months, where I took the principles and then created my own kata. And a kata is simply, in martial arts, it's just 7, 8, 9, 10 things that, again, neural patterns that you want to develop. So when I would look at my position, you look at a bunch of different things you do, but you look at a bunch of the positions that you end up in when certain things happen. Everyone has a neural response when when a play breaks down, and so you kind of got to you basically build your own martial arts. You use their teaching tools and the way which again, the reason it works is because it ties into neuroscience, and even though they learned it over time, but it's no different than having an MRI and understanding it. Follows the same principles.
I'm really curious about different sports like cross training and what benefits hockey players. Working with the national women's program in Calgary, having coached wrestling at high school, I found there to be a tremendous carryover in terms of using forces and feeling forces and reacting to weight and balance, and it, to me, transferred over to the sport of hockey, because uh, the first principle of the biomechanical principle is called stable balance. And to me, it's a fundamental principle to teach falling and getting up and being able to skate forward and backward, where your weight is when you move in certain directions. But I've always felt wrestling was another sport that you could do that would help them deal with directional skating, changing of direction, mobility, agility. You add on that puck control in game situations, nothing's predictable, just like a wrestling match. You go
Yeah,
at
I completely agree. I guess you could call it multi-sport training, but like to me, it's like when I was playing football, it was a huge emphasis on lifting weights as a form of resistance training. But as you know, there's a lot of ways to create resistance, and so balance training is now popular, but at the time it wasn't. But I had a lot of success with creating different balance training programs, and weight training just uses gravity, right? But you could use bands and different things. So to me, wrestling is like tremendous balance and strength training. You almost have to think of it like weightlifting, but way, way better, because it's like there's principles. There's, again, you getting into neurological principles, but like, did you know that most gymnasts can bench over 400 pounds, even though they don't bench press? And it's because you can take strength training from an unstable environment and apply it to a stable environment. But neurologically, your body and brain don't work the other way. You can't take stable training, like if you think about doing leg presses on a machine and then go into an unstable environment like an ice surface and expect your body won't. That's not how neurological transfer occurs. It goes from an unstable to stable, but it won't go the other way. So that's why wrestling is so effective, because it's unstable resistance training, and then it applies directly to 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 almost any sport.
I don't know if anybody else has any other questions related to what you're talking about. I have one that takes us in a completely different direction, but uh, Jordan, Peter, Hal, any questions? Tom, Michael? I've we talked about this yesterday, Michael. It's it's sort of more related to leadership, what I call ethical coaching, and how we can right the ship in minor sports. Somebody got a question? Nope. Okay. And Bruce, I was sort of trying to figure out why you got involved writing those books, and we had some discussions we didn't want to record about problem being uh, parents. And I related to you that to me today, the problem maybe 10 years ago, the parent problem starts with the executive problem of the board that runs the association. And the coaches today, the parents that are leading on the boards, the good parents can do things the right way. Like you said, everybody comes in wanting to do a good job, and pretty soon the sport clock takes over and the selfishness of their own child takes over. So my concern here is, despite all the expertise we have with X's and O's, emotional intelligence and creating a culture, growth culture to provide a positive sporting experience for anyone. I think that's what your book intended, to educate players and parents of athletes. And we are sort of trying to influence those responsible for sports to play a bigger role in influencing that. I don't know if it makes sense, Bruce, that related to your books and your experience getting into hockey and going through the ups and downs and the difficulties. But this is where we're at right now. I am personally at a crossroads of my life, which isn't going to be too much longer, serve the good of the game. In other words, try to make things better for everyone, not just the players, but the coaches who are meaning to do their best, and even the volunteer board members who mean to do their best. So that's sort of where I come from, Bruce. I don't know how you can relate to that over your lifetime of your kid growing up playing hockey. I know the story you told me about your boy, in spite of all the he talked about, they learn and do good things in spite of it. I don't know if you can relate that.
Well, yeah, my experience in hockey, I mean, like I was telling you the other day, you know, I didn't intend to get involved in hockey. We thought we'd probably be, you know, anyway, he ended up in a school with other kids primary that were all playing. He wanted to play, and it really, I mean, what an incredible game. I mean, what fun we had. You get roped in so early because it's just those kids with those big helmets on and those little tiny bodies, and how quickly they improve and fly around and do, and I love sports. I've always loved sports, and to me there's no greater experience than spending time working on skills with your kids and laughing and playing. It's the absolute best. The the only downside is that if you think about a group of parents, and it's when coaches blatantly, you know, break the rules, or blatantly like play their own. It makes it hard for people to just smile and have a good time. You know, it's like, it's disappointing, and that was the only downside, was that you tried to stay positive and you tried to have fun, but it's just clear that it's, and I didn't struggle with it to the degree that other parents did, but some parents, it's like really, really upsetting. And you're hanging around with these people, and you're spending $300 a night at a hotel, and you know, you just want to have fun. You just want to have fun, and you don't want to be that Daryl Belfry situation, you know, where, like I was telling you, the coach walks into the lobby of the, you know, the hotel, or you see them in the sports store, and they got to duck their head, and kind of, you can see the shame, right? And these are in towns and communities. It's like so I don't know. I'm a big fan of coaches writing down their most important principles and how they're going to handle a few situations, and handing them out before the season, and then kind of sticking to those things, like principle-based leadership, where you're like, you know what, you know, I'm running this team, these are my rules, and you can agree or disagree, but you can agree or disagree on the front end. You're not asking these parents who are sitting there hoping to see little Johnny in the third period, and you know, he's 10 years old and he gets one shift, and you know, like you hate to see that, right? So that was a very real part of you know, and I'm not that long out of it. I mean, my kid's 18 years old, so I'm kind of like, there's divorces that came out of this. I saw like communities get destroyed, like you wouldn't believe it, well, you would believe, but it's like if these parents could go back in time and coach like they were grandparents, they would like I'm not doing that again. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not worth it, and it doesn't help the kid. And so, as far as writing the book was a bit of a celebration of coaches, because coaches are volunteers and they're helpful, and it takes a community to raise a kid, and you've got all these, so they're real asset if they just follow the basic structure of, you know, like I said, whatever they decide to do, write it down and follow it. And but the book was written for parents like me who want to be super efficient in terms of helping their kid, and who actually want to spend some time with their kid, and who want to enjoy the whole experience. And at the end of the day, get a kid that got a lot out of the experiential experience while trying to be the very best they could be. There's a lot of fun had, a lot of great memories, a lot of, and but you know, doing it in an intelligent fashion, so that if you got pro potential, you're going to make pro, and if you don't, you're going to have a heck of a good time. You're going to build a great relationship. So just a little clarity around what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how to do it efficiently.
Bruce, I'd like Sammy to introduce herself. Sammy, you're coaching your daughters now, and you said you've changed associations, I believe, and are hoping to create a better experience for kids. That's why you and your husband have taken on the responsibility. So that's what Bruce, we've been talking about the good of the game, and why Bruce got involved writing books was to improve that. But introduce yourself and tell a bit of your story, and I'm sure it'll lead to further discussion. Go ahead, Sammy.
Well, hi, Bruce. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm just coming from another meeting, but I played for Wally for a while with the national team. Was very fortunate to have him as a coach, and went on to participate in the 3 Olympics. And now my husband is a 6-time Paralympian in the sport of sledge hockey. And so we are just entering into the hockey world. My daughter last year entered into the hockey world in what was a mixed environment, but a really serious hockey organization. And it was a little bit of a drive from our house, so that was not fun. It was early mornings. That was not fun. And she just wasn't enjoying the process. And so we just decided that we would coach the next year at a close organization that was just down the street and just really try to make it really fun. We did go to our first coaches meeting, and it's a girls organization, and there were 17 men in the room. And somebody asked my husband, who's in a wheelchair, asked me, not my husband, if he's going to be able to go on the ice. And it turned both of us off right away. We were like, this is not the experience that we wanted. But on our drive home, we decided that, if we don't change it, who does? And so for the 15 girls selected for our little house league team with 6 and 7-year-olds, try to make the best experience we can for them. And I think that that's what we will be attempting to do, and making it just a joyous experience on and off the ice. And if my daughter still doesn't want to do it, that's okay. But my ultimate dream is that she can skate well enough that when she's 20 and I'm 60, we can play on the same rec hockey team. So I think that would be such an incredible thing. And we just want her to be able to be exposed to so many different sports. Be a good swimmer, learn to skate, learn to run, jump and throw and do gymnastics and whatever she gravitates to in the end. But selfishly, I think my husband and I are really excited that we get to be in the game a little bit this year and be coaching. And so, yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it really can be fun. And we've had, I've had watched a lot of different coaches through the years, and it doesn't have to be hard. It really doesn't. Like it's just efficient practice, understanding. Just there are things that you have to understand, and then you have to have some basic principles about how you're going to treat people and how you're going to. But I've watched people coach really, really well, and it's almost like watching a great player. It looks effortless. They're just clear on what their values are, what their goals are. They understand coaching. They understand development, and they understand that it doesn't need it can be lighthearted. It can be fun. That's the biggest thing for me, was just man, I had a lot of fun, and I wouldn't and I was like, one of the reasons I love playing sport was that, like, and I was so intense, and I was my goal was to be the hardest worker on every team I played on, and I was all in on winning, and I loved it so much that I was a guy that 3/4 of the way through the year, I'm already mapping out what I'm going to improve on in the off season, what I'm excited about my off season training before the off season even gets there. I'm no more than 3 or 4 days off after the season, and I'm back. You couldn't outwork me because I loved it. But man, I had so much fun. I was that intense and that hardworking, but it was fun for me. Practice was fun. Training was fun. I loved every bit of it. So having a kid in a sport, I was honored to be able to play with him, to be able to, like, I knew that I could have done more efficient things with him when he was younger that would have translated a little quicker to what he was doing on the ice and get quicker results. But he really liked playing ball hockey with me in the basement. He really liked foolish games and carrying on and gear, and it's so you can teach movement and deception and fun, and you can laugh and play, and it doesn't, like, that's what I wanted to teach parents, that, man, if you love sport, you don't have to control it as a parent. You can just participate and create fun games with your kid and spend one-on-one time and enjoy every minute of it, and that can really help them. And you're not displacing other kids, and you're not controlling a process, and it's not a cutthroat world. It's just like,
I'm your speaker.
What's that?
Tom's speaker. I think his dog's barking.
Ah, yes. So that's that was my perspective in the book. Was I wanted just to educate parents on some of these things, write the book in a way that emotionally engaged them continuously. It's like written in a certain style of writing where you can really engage someone emotionally and so the content doesn't have to be sciencey, and it doesn't have to be hard to get through, because it's like the way you love and care about your kid can actually, you can propel someone through something as hard as reading a book, which is, like the majority of people don't read a book after high school. So you're talking a very small percentage of, I'm talking about hockey parents who actually read, who really want to learn and have fun and anyway. But that's, then like I said, that was all super. The only downside is that every sport, you're going to have people that want to control it. You're going to have people that might, you got some of your top NCAA players, like some of your top NCAA programs in the States still have dad coaches. Do you know what I mean? They still manage to get their kid. I can tell you one that's, got a GA scholarship to come on and help the team in an assistant manager role. It's the only way they could get a scholarship, and now they're on the power play. So dad can still do a lot, and so you're never going to get the unfairness completely out of hockey. That's just, and it's in every sport. It's in every sport. It's even in football now, because football's changed a little bit into these, like every other sport, these high performance institutes, these high performance teams. Becomes a bit of a race to get. So it's in every sport, but it's what you can do one by one is teach a caring parent who really wants to how to deal with it. You know what I mean? How to have all the fun and all the good times and have all the success, to give your child a chance if they want to, if they're like me and they love it to the point where it's not work and you can't outwork them, they'll find a role in the sport. But if they don't have that, you won't know whether they have that or not until they're older and they can make their own choices. You just try to give them a foundation. You try to do it through spending time with them, having fun, finding fun skills and fun ways to play with your kid, so that it creates the foundation for future success if they choose to go on that. Now, my son lost interest. He's in his first year university. He's going to play hockey his whole life. I mean, but it's like, he wasn't like me. Like you'd have to peel that jersey off me, which they finally did when I was 36 or something, 6 knee surgeries, and you still don't want to leave, you still want to play. Well, that's not everybody, right? And it shouldn't be everybody, but so that's kind of what I wrote the book about, and how I just how to do it so it's fun and it's smart, smart, and to treat it like an experiential activity, like it's that that iron sharpens iron. You're gonna learn through hard times too. It's impossible to learn. Cotton candy doesn't sharpen iron, right? You need some adversity.
Bruce, I'm wondering, what is the title of that book?
My book, Little Athletes, Big Leaders.
So, Little Athletes, Big Leaders, and it's available to who, how?
I've got about 20 or 30 copies left over in my office. I wrote it years ago and used to sell it on Amazon and through, but frankly, I've just been, off to other projects and rolling on other things. Created a lot of stuff through my work with Andrews, because when I found them through a friend of mine who I have a tremendous respect for, a great university professor, brilliant lady who knew about that place from a prior generation, and you stumble on this place that's like got all the same values. This idea of you can be really sciencey and really neurologically correct and create an awful lot, but you can also be like ethical and fun and humor based, and you can have laughter and music, and you can, it doesn't need to be this heavy, pressure packed experience in order to efficiently get better. So anyway, I wrote it to just help out parents, because, and it wasn't just about teaching how to teach. Like a lot of what I was hearing good-hearted, kind moms and dads telling their 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds is just, it wasn't going to damage them psychologically in the world as much as it was going to make it almost impossible for them to be a high-end athlete. They were going to end up anxious and they were going to struggle when, like, there's a way you have to think. There's an inner voice that gets created that's very often almost implanted by a really, like a parent or a mentor or a coach or someone early on. And it's usually a positive voice that's along the lines of, you know, I believe in you. You can do this. You're great. You're calm under pressure. You're like, you can teach. You don't have to teach this stress of trying to make this team, and you're 6 years old, and you know, or, I don't know. So there was a lot. I just saw a lot of good-hearted people doing inefficient or damaging things, and there were bright people. They were like bright people, the best parents, you know. And so I thought, some of these might be readers, and I thought I would just put a little thing together. Just got up 5 in the morning and just thought, I'm gonna just do this work for a little bit and create this little document, and just kind of grew into a book, you know. It's like I had a little more to say and a little more to teach than I thought. And that's kind of where that came from. Wally, I can send you up. I'll throw. You throw me your address. I'll throw 10 or 15 copies in a box and mail them up to you, and you can hand them out to people if you want. It's honestly, and I'm not saying this to brag, but people love this book. They emotionally connect with this book. It's.
We don't live anywhere near Wally.
Well, you can ask. He'll send it to you. I'm not doing the.
I'll mail it to all the
I'm not
shops.
Can we order them though, or we can't order them on
know.
Amazon or anything?
I don't know. You
Well,
have to look. It
Alan
might
told
still be
me-
on Amazon. It used to be.
But- Alan Andrews told me you can order them through him.
Okay, good. Order them throughout.
AndrewsHockeyGrowth.com.
Any money you send to Al's money well spent. They're good people. Really
He
good
goes
people.
to a good cause with his programs.
Oh, tremendous what they do.
My concern is, like, and I was going to say this before we brought this up, if I win a lottery, I'm going to get you to remarket the book, and I'll pay for it to give to minor hockey associations at the U11 level, because it's that critical to understand the ethical coaching that's needed today.
Thank you. I appreciate that, but I just kind of like, I go deep on projects, and I'll be 3 or 4 years on this and 3 or 4 years on that, and 3, you know. So no, I know I helped some parents, and you know what, and a lot of times your writing clarifies your own thinking, and it just, you know, it's like refined thinking. You get to edit it, you get to look at it from different perspectives, you get to look at it on different days, you get to look at it and you know, the amount of research you do to write something, you end up, you know, you talked about the Positive Coaching Alliance. Those guys do great work. You end up stumble across all these people and their ideas, and you kind of put things together. But I think hockey's improving. It's just you know, sometimes everybody has unrealistic expectations. Like parents sometimes have unrealistic expectations of coaches. Coaches have unrealistic expectations of parents. Parents have unreal expectations of kids. You know, everybody ends up in this negative feedback loop of, where it's really like, if you just get coaches to do a decent job, so it's not so obvious that they're pinning some kids to the bench at young ages, and just, it's like, can we just enjoy this ride a little bit? Can you make it like Stephen, like, and then the rest of it is really on parents to lower their expectations about, asking their kid to be the very best version of themselves that they could possibly be at every single second of the day when they're on the ice or when they're practicing, and start to look at them like a human being, and sort of try to judge them on the same standard that you judge, your friends or yourself, right? You're going to have good days and bad days, and, you're going to work along. Sport's hard, right? It's hard. It's one of the things I don't miss about it now that I'm out of it. I don't miss the losses. I don't miss the injuries. I don't miss the expectations I put on myself. I don't, like, every day is a good day now. Like, it's never the day after a loss and I played crappy, where I've really got to work to try to be and not miserable, So it's hard for kids, right? It's competitive.
Al Ramsey, you had mentioned that you listened to his CDs.
Al Ramsey.
Al Ramsey is working in Massachusetts. He went to Andrews Hockey School. He heard you speak a number of times.
Oh, Al here. Okay, yeah, gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha.
And Al, your kid's listening to it. He puts it in when he drives. So,
well, Al was talking about my intro CD, which is for
yes,
kids that are just 5 years old, and what it's called How Stars Are Made, and it's a series of stories about star athletes, right, from different genders and different ages and different eras and different sports, who all, like, became great because they loved working at it, and they all came through different types of adversity. So all you're trying to imprint on a child that age is that you can do it, and adversity is a normal part of the process. So if you're feeling like you can't, hey, that's normal. Everybody goes through that. It doesn't mean you can't. It just means you're feeling like that right now. So they're designed to be inspiring. And then the next level of it is Sport Leadership Volume 1, and then Sport Leadership Volume 2, where you're working kids up this progression of, this is what leadership is. This is what, because a lot of people don't understand, particularly in sport. They think leadership is talking, or they think it starts with how you act. And so there's a whole kind of progression. A lot of it's based on great coaches like Wooden and people like that have had 35, 40 years of coaching. And, you pick up on things. And particularly the unique thing about John Wooden is that he was a great writer. So he didn't just have the experience, he shared the experience. And then he was also ethical, and he was doing work at a big university. So his work was studied, and his style was studied, and his techniques were studied. And so there's a good body of work there that you can kind of tap into. And, so, and then after those leadership progression pieces, then I went into the big one, which is the neurological one, where you're into, like, okay, if you got a 2-year-old, if you got a 5-year-old, if you got a, because even with a 2-year-old, the joint mobility stuff you can do so they keep their flexibility, which saves you about 30 years of hard yoga, just keeping what you have when you're a little baby, stuff like that, like tips that really make a difference, right?
Sammy Joe, I think you're going to want one. It'd be really good.
It's fun to learn.
Yeah. No, from the day I met you, Bruce, years ago at the Andrews School, and then since then, I saw those things, and I still say they're ahead of the time, and you're just sort of, okay, I'm done that. I'm going to move on to something else.
Yeah, I think it was, honestly, Wally, I am a pretty good researcher, and it was really, it's the best research in the world. So it's really just translating it. So it's other people doing the work, but you just do the work to build a product that people can can relate with. And I thought the reason I used audio, now there's CDs, so it's back in the day, but the reason I used audio is because sport parents tend to have a lot of car time. And, you know, so I just, you know, like, you can't ask them to come home and read a book. And they do a lot of their learning through video. Like, they'll watch the sport, they'll watch games, so they don't really want to read, right? They want to, that while they're driving, sometimes they want to learn, or they want to think about things, or they kind of, good sport parents will sort of file things away and say, okay, I'm going to re-listen to that after a really bad tournament or a really bad loss, so I can access that, get in the right mindset at the time. Otherwise, I'm going to be overly emotional and say and do some bad coaching, frankly, with your kid. 2 or 3 hour drive on the way home. It's unnecessary. You don't need to feel that way. They don't need to feel that way.
Bruce, I'm glad we got talking about the academic side and your becoming an author and your studying. You told me a story. I asked you, how did you get into it? You went to university as a walk-on to play football, and
Well,
then
technically, I wasn't a walk-on because I went to university to go to university. You know
okay,
what I mean?
yeah,
Like, a walk-on is someone who kind of knows that I'm going to go, and I haven't been recruited. I haven't
okay,
been,
go ahead with it.
and I'm going to go there and play. You know, I was just, you know, I just wanted, you know, to go to university and frankly get off the farm and go experience the world. So, and then just ended up, loved school, loved learning, loved, you know, I was really into political science, government, how, you know, just how to govern, lead, how to make things better, how to do all that kind of, you know, just really into that theory and how things were done in different places and historically, and how we could make things better. And so I just really enjoyed that, and ended up, you know, getting asked to try out for the football team, and then just really barely made the team. Had no background in the sport or anything, but I just practiced with the team that first year. But it was more, and this is something that you kind of look for in kids a little bit, like, even though I was just practicing and not even playing games, and I'm not even like, I'd be on like an hour and a half to 2 hour high after practice. Like, I was almost like I was just vibrating. Like, I just, and I just didn't, I guess I was a competitor. I wanted to beat that guy. Yeah, I wanted to beat the next guy. And then you know, because I started out, everyone was beating me at everything. And then I love that feeling of being looked at differently, and because there's so much one-on-one type stuff, and I had a great coach, and he was very much into the spirit of the game, and philosophically how, you know, and he still he just retired. He had a really high-end job in the north where he was in the Department of Justice and different. He just retired back to this area, and we're becoming like best friends again after like 30 years. And it's the opposite of the Daryl Belfry story. There's no shame there. There's no I wish I did. He simply had my best interests at heart at all times, and I'm forever grateful for that. So you have that coaching relationship, instead of feeling like, oh, I decided to pin these kids to the bench, and I decided to try push people down to win a short-term prize. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot on the line for coaches. If you got the right perspective, you can give so much, and it's forever appreciated. It honestly is. Never forget those great coaches.
Bruce, you told me the story, and Sammy, you'll like this. I wondered how he got into writing, and you talked about your profs and how you questioned them. Can you relate that story? And it's sort of the
Yeah,
academic side.
it's just one of those, you know, my personality type. If you I don't know, have you guys ever got personality tests done on yourself, like the Myers-Briggs and that sort of thing? Well, you know, I'm that person that thinks they're right, you know, so it's just one of those, you know, you're having a discussion in class with a professor about something you disagree with, and you realize, okay, we're not going to come to an agreement on this, so I'm the kind of person that's going to now write a paper on that. I'm going to go and I'm going to research, and I'm going to lay out the argument. I'm going to take 15 or 20 pages, and you know, so when that thing comes across the desk, of course the prof is smiling as he's reading it, right? Because it's one of those people, right? It's not someone who's in the class for a mark, or someone who's it's someone who's legitimately thinking and wants to learn and has an opinion and has an inquiring mind, and isn't just going to blow over when you tell them they're wrong. They're going to say, no, you know what I mean? And that's what academics is. That's what good academics. It's just this quest to logically create some version of the truth, right? And collectively agree on. So it's fun to argue back and forth. And it ended up going from there to, within just a few years, I did such an interesting honors thesis in political science that was completely counterintuitive to all the literature that was out there. And so, you know, when I ended up going, first time I ever got on an airplane was to go to the CFL Combine. The second time I ever got on an airplane was to go to the CFL Draft, and then at the same time, I had to go to this presentation in Ottawa where these two profs had taken my thesis, and the three of us made a chapter in a book they had been writing, and I had to present to all these professors. So this was kind of the world I was in at the time, which was a blend of success in both academics and sport, just because I had an inquiring mind and a real passion for both of them. Found both of them really interesting, and I found that really helpful, because there's so many down days if you're striving to be good at anything. So if you had a down day in sport, you kind of could lean on academics for a day or two till you're over your little funk and ready to get, and vice versa. So they really actually helped me to have more than just the sport in my life. That's a tough roller coaster, right?
Bruce, I absolutely admire what you're saying. I went to university as a polar opposite. I went there to play hockey. I didn't go there to learn. And it's not until I've reached my age working with this group of people that I realize I've wasted a lot of time playing a game, dedicating my life to the game. And I'm curious, I don't know, Jordan, are you back on by chance? Because I have a question for you as an educator. He's in an elementary school, Bruce. He was principal of a high school. And as an educator, I'm sure he would appreciate, we have no idea the capacity of our students. Like, you're an example, Bruce, of your kid grew up underestimated. And all the kids that we're coaching, we have no idea of the brilliance between their ears. And somehow, Bruce, you managed to have the internal drive to pursue things while you pursued sport, but to be truly curious about things and wanting to learn for a reason. So I really admire that. And I think the message that I have to anybody who happens to listen is never underestimate your player or your student. The job, there's a saying in the high school I taught at after I retired, Bruce. The principal that was the staff member took over the position of principal, and she put up a sign, and I don't know who the author was. You might know, Sammy, you might know. it's not about how smart the child is. It's about how the child is smart. And that's the way you need to approach what you do with them. We judge them, we evaluate them, we put them in little groups according to their our perceived intelligence of them, and we end up closing the door of growth, inspiration, and development. So I'm glad you brought that up, Bruce. And Sammy, I don't know if Bruce knows a bit about your athletic academic background, but she went to university in the States on a track and field scholarship. Sammy, I'm going to let you tell the story a little bit about yourself, because the two of you are similar people. You're great thinkers and you're great leaders. Go ahead, Sammy.
I'm not sure what Wally would like me to tell you, but I think, like everybody, have a very storied journey through life, and I love your comments about being the one that just really wanted to get better and wanted to be that person. That was me as an athlete for sure, and being a woman growing up in the more than 40 years ago now, there wasn't necessarily places for us to dream about going to, and I simply wanted to be the best at everything I did. I didn't know that that was different, and now that I have a child, that's not her MO at all. She just simply wants to have joy in her brain at all times, but there is no want to get a ball first or be there first or outrun somebody. And I always had that. So I think my parents had to really hold that back a lot of the times. That was the role that they played as parents. But they didn't grow up in the athletic community, I think, which really served me well and my brother well. But I grew up in a swimming family, and ended up on a track and field scholarship at Stanford to throw the discus and javelin. And it wasn't until magically one day Wally Kozak saw me play with random women in Calgary that I ended up on the Olympic team. So a very different and storied, I guess, journey through life. But I really do think that, had I played college athletics, I might have been burnt out, had I had that pressure on me at an early age to make the NHL or to do something beyond what maybe I perceived possible. I might have been burnt out, but I never had those constraints. And so I played professionally until I was 42 because I still loved it. And now at 46, play on 3 women's rec hockey teams as a forward or defenseman, and still really love it. I mean, find so much joy in it. But I, in my older years, have had to come to realize that that is not everybody's journey in sport. And, how can we create sport for the joy that it brought me when you don't necessarily have that drive and that desire? So we try to do with our daughter all the things that you have suggested, and just, simply make it fun. And I used to talk so much during presentations about how I was so very fortunate to have parents that simply wanted their daughter to find joy in whatever she was doing. I mean, it could have been needlepoint. It wouldn't have mattered. My parents simply wanted me to have joy. And when they saw that in hockey, they encouraged that. Now that I have a daughter that finds that in dance and in gymnastics and in different things that are outside of our realm, it at times is hard because you want to direct them in different areas. You want them to be more like you, and they're not. And I thought we had more control as parents before we became parents, but you don't. And you simply, I have to use all those gifts that my parents gave me to support and be there, and to learn, and to simply be somebody that is a conduit for her joy, and not try to live our lives through them.
100%.
That was a long-winded way of
No,
telling
it's
my
true
story.
though. It's true though. Sport is a very small piece of the, and it is funny to, like, my daughter was the same way. She, like, there was no amount of competition or contact that I didn't like. My daughter loved dance and played probably, I'm going to say 10 years of soccer, without ever being first to the ball, without ever having physical contact, or without ever heading a ball. So it's like, just literally mastered the art of dancing
That would
out
for
there
sure
on
be
the
my
soccer
daughter.
field.
If you could, I mean, if
and
there
be a
was
part
like
of a group.
competitive park playing, or competitive arts and crafts, then maybe there might be some,
Yeah.
some hope for it. But
Yeah.
no, you're right. She played soccer this summer, and I filmed a little portion of her final game, and she was nowhere near the ball, but she was doing pirouettes and just having just a blast. And there was a bouncy castle at the end and cotton candy. They did a whole festival. She
Yeah.
just on the way home just loved it. Like, Mom, I was so good.
Yeah.
Like,
I was
okay.
really
The ball
I
just was
love
never close to me. I mean, it was like it's the ball's fault. Like, I don't know. The ball wasn't close to me. That's the way it was.
I had a really interesting moment with my son once where we had a lot of fun in hockey, and a lot of fun, like, but we worked on stuff every day, and we, and then I took him bass fishing one night, and you fish the tides here in Nova Scotia, and they have striped bass, and and all we caught was an eel. And he was probably, I'm going to say 11, 12 years old. And we've had a lot of great times, and we've been in hockey since 5 or 6 years old. And, and me playing sport, he really felt a connection with me. And he looked at me that night at about 1 a.m, and he told me it was the best day of his life. Right. And you kind of went, man, you really got to listen. Like, you really got to pay attention. And, even with a competitive kid, even with an athletic kid, there's a lot of, you kind of got to go down. You got to listen and really do the things that they want to do, spend the time that they want to spend. And, because you guys are all in sport because obviously you love sport, right? But when you love it, it's not work. And if you just take that love down 1 little %, then it's work. You take it down a little more, it's hard work. You take it down a little more, it's complete drudgery, right? It's complete drudgery. So it's like your experiences in sport, if you love it, are very different than someone's experience in sport. They don't love it. And the interesting thing you said, Sammy, and this is also true, a lot of people don't understand that it ebbs and flows. Like, I'll hear comments every now and then, guys in the NHL that will be honest, and they'll say, last year I hated hockey. I didn't want to go to the rink, and now I feel differently. And so it even ebbs and flows with, like, pro players who loved it their whole life and have been ultra competitive, let alone just people's kids in the general population,
Bruce, I'm going to try to bring Al into the fold here because he has a boy playing hockey, and what both of you have said about your experiences, it's really, really fascinating. Al, how can you relate to that with your own child? I think we've all had kids growing up, done what they do, and you're now at the developmental stage of being a father and involved in sports leadership in your community voluntarily. Al, can you carry on with this?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can relate to everything that was just said. Like, I mean, I'm seeing that with my own boy now. He's 10. And, I think like last year he really wanted to go down the basement and practice a lot, at home. And we did a lot of fun stuff. We got some crazy games where I throw pucks at him and he dodges them and that kind of thing. And he likes that kind of stuff. He doesn't really like he doesn't like drills. He likes games. He likes to play. He likes to have a little competition. So we make everything a game. Everything's a competition. And, this year he's not quite as into that anymore. Like, I go down myself, right? And shoot every now and again. He'll come and join me. And he did the other night, and we shot pucks for probably 5 minutes. And then he wanted to just, I don't know, he made up this little catch game where we were throwing balls at each other, like 2 balls at a time, try to catch them in the air and spin around and throw it under your leg. Like, he was just laughing his head off. Like, it was the best thing ever, and it was the stupidest game. We probably did that for half an hour, but then at the end of the night, he's like giving me a high five, and he's like, okay, this is great. I'll go to bed, and so I mean, it's completely relatable, right? And I see that ebbing and flowing a little bit. The next day, we were out, and he said, Dad, why am I'm not as good anymore. I'm not as good as I was last year. I'm like, you're 10. Like, the other kids grew a little bit. Everybody's a little bit better this year. You want to, if you're feeling that way, like, I don't think that's the case. If you're feeling like you want to have some more success, let's play a little bit more in the basement and whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, we can do that. But he's, it's interesting being a parent coach, and I've been doing it for quite a while now. I've coached a lot of kids, a lot of young age kids. Like, I've been with the 10 and under group now for about the last 8 years. Anywhere kids from 4 that are just learning to stand up to, now his AA team, and they're all unique. Some of them hit the ice and they just drive, and some of them, they get out there on the ice and they're more interested in what's, making snow angels or whatever. But that one who's making the snow angels today might end up being, the one who's the most into it next season. Like, it's just the ebb and flow thing was completely hit the nail on the head. I see that with so many of the kids, and I think our job is just to teach them the right things at the right time, make it fun, give them all a chance, and they'll make it what they'll make of it.
Jordan, welcome back, Jordan. This part of the segment, I'd asked a question after Bruce had talked about going to university. He went to university as a truly inquisitive student and ended up being convinced to try out with a football team and making it. And his desire for learning and curiosity for learning, and you as an educator, it was probably the most inspirational part of this session for me, is that we've got to believe in our students, because we have no idea of their human potential that lies within them. And Bruce is a good example. I think we all are. Growing up, who would have thought of us being able to be what we are, doing what we're doing? So we've been talking about that. The coaches, who I know are turning off kids, but they're still functioning and making it a good experience amongst their group, in spite of us, in spite of the coaches or the teachers that maybe prejudge them and don't inspire them like we want our kids to be inspired. So that's sort of been the nature of the talk for about the last 30 minutes. And hell, I'm just going to throw this at you. In all your coaching, in terms of talking about kids' potential, whether it's athletics, academics, anything come to your mind that you might add?
Were you talking to me? Yeah, I mean, this is, I've been making some notes here and texting with Tom a little bit. One of the great challenges we have in youth is how little time we actually have to help kids get better. And in today's world versus what we did 20 years ago, we have less time. We play 40% more games, which is fine. Wally and I have talked about that. But, the kids down here, they're all playing 3 or 4 sports, and they overlap, or they don't just play hockey, and they play lacrosse, and they go from lacrosse practice to the hockey rink. And I'm not saying that's bad, but it's hard to get the attention of the athlete. If a 10-year-old is an athlete, I'm not sure they're quite athletes. They're just kids. And so I think there's a lot of fatigue now I'm going to be coaching 14-year-olds and I've been watching them, and they don't play very hard. I mean, here they are in tryouts, and they're not, they're not playing very hard. And now the challenge will be to not make them, ask them to play a little more harder, be a little more competitive, play with intent, play with purpose. But they're 14, and that we talk about the physiology, but we also have to talk of, or neurology, but, mentally they're, according to the research, they're only halfway formed. Their brains are only half formed at 14. And they're just beginning to understand concepts that we understand completely. Because we've done this for so long and we've seen it for so long, and we're adults. Our brains got formed some way or another. By the time we were in our early 20s, we spent the rest of our lives, tearing them down a little bit with our lifestyles, maybe. But what's obvious to us is not obvious to kids. We have to help them. And that's why I love let the game teach the game. We need to give them more and more experiences so they can learn patterns and they can figure stuff out on their own. And I'll just tell this little story, and then I'll quit. But I have told you all that I'm trying to learn to play guitar, and an electric guitar, and I'm actually trying to learn music, not just how to play songs, not just the drill. I'm actually trying to learn all the scales fit together so I can effortlessly play up and down the neck on a guitar. I'm told it's one of the hardest things you can learn to do, especially for a guy who can't sing and couldn't play a flutophone in grade school. But it's instructive to me as a coach about repetition and doing it the right way, not just getting out there and doing it. So the great part about coaching is this challenge. And I think we also mentioned past the off season, we have lots of ideas, and then we get our team, and then you start to try to implement those ideas. And that maybe we're a little skill deficient, maybe we're a little commitment deficient, maybe there's some things that we as coaches might not have much control over. I have always said, though, when I used to do the clinics, the number one thing you can do for youth players to make them better from the beginning of the season to the end of the season is teach them to skate better. Just continuously teach them how to skate better. Not, and young players, and Sammy, you're working with that, they will cheat on every skating drill they can. And the kids at the end of the line cheat the most, and the good skaters are at the front of the line, because the kids at the end hope the coaches won't pay any attention to them. And when they skate circles, they're going to move their feet like this instead of like this, right? And so, as educators, we have to be there and provide the right kind of coaching and help them learn to bend their knees and to slow down. You got to teach all this stuff. Our guest spoke about this right at the beginning. We have to teach these fundamental skills and teach them to do them slow before they go fast. Because if they don't learn outside edges, if they don't get comfortable on one skate, they'll just cheat their way through it. And then there's a point where you can't cheat enough to keep up with the kids that have learned to do it right. So anyways, this has been such a great, I always say this, but such a great Thursday morning for me. I just love it every Thursday. But I'm going to be in Costa Rica the next two, so I'll try to log in from there, but we'll see.
Tom, I watched your team practice, and I watched the other team practice yesterday. I love the practices, but hell, they can't skate.
They can't skate?
They can't skate. They skate relatively well at that age level, but when I look at Alan's hockey school and the way he teaches skating, forward striding, backward striding, turning, crossing over, those fundamentals are absolutely mastered. And he focuses on the details to the point where the stop and T start is critical in his theory of skating related to science. And so here I am, I'm watching practices and been asked to work with the other team's coach, and I'm going to share some videos of University of Ottawa female team doing 2 laps. They couldn't skate as well as Tom's team. They were pounding the ice, and then when they took a picture, their sticks were all above their nose. They had no knee bend. That's fundamental. So some of the skating needs some deliberate attention and practice, and I think our roles, because we're not actively out there coaching them and know how to make corrections and how to teach these things, is to influence coaches to teach these things. So I'll be following up with a couple videos of Danielle Goyette doing her 3 laps before every practice that she learned from a speed skating coach, and who actually became her skating coach. And she was the best skater, glider, and skater I ever saw. But that's something that, to me, just seeing and doing is a way of learning. And so I just wanted to throw that out there in terms of the teaching side, Bruce, because, and I know that having worked with Alan, he had me during COVID break down video of his hockey schools over the years with all his original footage of how he taught those skating skills. And that's where we got to meet. He put together a film. It was maybe 30 minutes, broken up into 3 10-minute pieces. Forward stride, backward stride, and turning. I did the first ever skills skating coaching clinic for Hockey Canada to a high performance group. That was my video. It was the best thing I've ever seen. To this day, it's the best thing I've ever seen. So it's that fundamental base when you're talking about, Bruce, the right start, doing the right thing, and just doing it at the right time and becoming the best you can be. And I think that's why those serious, driven, motivated athletes like yourself, Bruce, that went to Andrew's school since they were 4, they usually end up in the best league in the world. They're crazy enough to do that, and they did the right thing at the right time to get that way. Tom Malloy, go ahead. Speaker, Tom. Tom, turn your speaker on.
There it goes. Yeah, your comments there, I saw the same thing. So my plan is to have Gaston there for 45 minutes on Sunday morning. And Sammy, my assistant coach, you know her. Her name is Cassie Campbell. So anyways, we do the games. And just like you loving to play, she plays every game with the girls. She just absolutely loves it. So, I'm going to get Gaston, he has a whole routine about edges to get them started. And I want him to do that and stride on Sunday morning, because as we all know, if you can't, you have to be able to skate to be successful in hockey. So that's my plan.
Bruce, I don't know if you know that Cassie's from Cape Breton or from Prince Edward Island.
No,
She's
I
not
didn't
from
know.
Prince Edward Island. Just her dad is. So
Her
she'd
dad
spend
is.
summers there. Yeah, she's from Brampton.
Well, she's living in Brampton now. No, was she born in Brampton?
Yeah, her dad was born in PEI, so they had a
Oh.
summer home in PEI, so they'd spend the summers there.
Anyway, you had a camp in Prince Edward Island. Was that before Torino?
Yes, leading up to Torino.
Okay, well, I didn't go to that camp because I transitioned from coaching to scouting. And I told Cassie, there's a guy down there that runs a hockey school, one of the pretty good ones. I want you to say hi for me. It was Alan Andrews. So actually, that led Bruce to Alan. When I used his videos, I credited him for it at the presentation. I just said, this is the best stuff there is. And it still is the best stuff. And we don't start getting the right stuff at the right age, at the right level. So it led to this whole, we're here today because of it. Now, Bruce Beaton, you're a part of that circle, and it's really good having you on, Bruce. Peter Whitney, I hope you're with us, Mike Benelli, and I'm just curious about some of your takeaways to this point. Peter?
I am here, Wally.
Go ahead, Peter.
No, I mean, I've enjoyed all of it, and always coming on here and listening. There's always something you can learn. I think with Bruce, again, it would be great to figure out a way to actually get that book, because I'd be certainly interested in that, and getting some copies and passing that around, because again, that's one of the things with this group, right, is we're essentially preaching to the choir on so many things. I think, which is good, because it reinforces what we feel that we know is right. When you hear other people verbalizing that, at least for me, it's really helpful with that end of things. So I'd love to get that book and try to pass it on, and figure out some way to reach out to more youth coaches or novice coaches, even at the college level. When I, like I said, I just retired from that piece of it, and there are a lot of really good, well-meaning young people getting those jobs, but they could do probably with some mentoring and some guiding as well. So, I mean, I'd love to see if there was some way that as a group we could reach out and do more of that. I'm not really sure how that is, but just kind of putting that out there.
Bruce, I have a question. When you worked with Brad, and you knew him personally, but you went on the ice with a theoretical idea in mind to work with the junior A team and apply some of the science of what you're talking about. Were you acting as a mentor with Brad, or a co-coach, or he was just receptive to you and it was just a fit? Can you describe a little bit about that experience? Because I know you talked to me on the phone about what you were doing, and Brad has been on and presented to this group before. Go ahead, Bruce.
Well, what we did was we built a program together. So you can look at coaching, but typically, again, football is very different, because football season is typically a lot shorter than hockey season or basketball season at a university, right? You're talking about a lot of times having things wrapped up in November, maybe December at the latest, So you have a program, and so we kind of did that Bill Belichick thing of scrapping everything and starting with analytics books, how goals are scored, and how just worked backward, and created the most efficient ways to do things collectively. Because it's one thing about hockey is that it's about the spaces between players, and it's about, a lot of timing comes down to anticipation. A lot of timing and anticipation come down to having a feel for what other people are going to do, and that sort of chemistry can take years to develop. And so, we took like Scotty Bowman talked about how the Bruins line of Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak a few years ago was the only line in hockey that reminded him of the 1970s Russian teams. And those Russian teams, obviously, it was, you know, communism, and they were, you know, national team in a communist environment where you're, you know, you have a day-to-day 8 to 10 hour commitment to work with other players to be the best in the world year round. You can develop that chemistry and you can develop that. So we sort of started to dig into, besides their unique skill sets, how these players were so good at anticipating and reading off each other and doing, and what the, you know, and we kind of combine that with, there were a couple of really good books that came out on analytics a couple of years ago. I can't remember what they're called, but we dug into the science of everything that was going, you know, and sort of, and tried to do the opposite of what Scotty Bowman was doing back in the day, which was he would coach the defensive zone and the neutral zone like a lot of hockey coaches. And he created this, his philosophy was, once they cross the blue line offensively, I let them do what they want, you know? And, but so we built these safe places for players to go, to pass out of, to do. We kind of used, like, you know, binary decision models and different things, and created a program, and then built, like I was saying earlier, you know, did skill assessment and just built an entire program around having each player, like, it's not unthinkable that you can take a skill or two as a hockey player and dramatically improve it, even at the junior level, in 1 year, if you work on it daily, if you have the resources, if you have the ice time, if you have people to do the work with, and if you have people designing the work that have a strong understanding of how neural patterns are created and developed so that they lead to more speed and accuracy. And so we put that whole puzzle together, and really got outstanding results. And then the question was whether we were going to do it for another year, whether that was best for his career, or you run your own program and you continue to refine these ideas, and or you jump to you jump to the queue as an assistant and work on a different part of the game, and focus closer on a smaller group, and kind of take your career in that direction. So it was kind of a co-consulting sort of thing, where we both had an interest in building a program and thought we'd take an off season and you know, work consistently toward that. And so that's what we did. And I know there's a lot of that's the future. I feel like that's the future. Yeah.
I refer to that as 21st century coaching. And I wonder if you could describe, before Brad took over the team, and he managed to build a pretty good program, and obviously it improved when you tried this activity. And he's facing new challenges in the queue. And this is one of the problems, is there's so many good ideas out there. And this group, the people that are actively coaching, like Jordan, are experimenting with these ideas and benefiting from them. They're seeing the results of what Belfry shared.
You have to be a head coach to run your own program. If you're not a head coach, you can't run your own program. And then everything is, you might have a voice, but you know, there's a consensus that has to occur, right? So if you are someone that wants to run your own program and wants to be hyper efficient about how you do it, and you lay out, and then you want to utilize science, knowledge, and understanding of neurology, understanding of the game and how the game is changing, understanding how, you know, just if you want to do that, you have to be the head person. You have to design it, and that's fun. That's exciting because there's, like I said, there's a lot of things. I think it's similar to football. There's a lot of things that have always been done, and then there's innovative people that run programs that move it forward. And so you get to be one of those people that moves things forward if you run your own program. But it's not. It's important to not call it coaching and to think of it as running your own program. It's a learning program, and it's a program with certain goals around what you're trying to achieve, and then you build it from what you're trying to achieve, and you build it with a great understanding of the types of things that some of the current information that allows you to build it with. Do you know what I mean? Like, we know more than we did 50 years ago. So why are we doing things like we did 50 years ago? And a lot of times it's because we haven't decided to run our own program, build our own program, and be bright and innovative about how we do it.
Anybody got anything to add? Any observations? I'm trying to relate what they're going through. It sort of falls into mentorship. Like,
A little bit. I think that if you wanted to learn about things like this, I think, like, the reason, like, John Wooden it's an interesting coaching mentor for someone who likes to read or learn, because he's obviously bright and innovative and, all those things. I mean, he's long since passed now, but like a lot of university programs in the United States, particularly in football and basketball, have a history of people that built programs, and then they wrote books about the programs they built. So you can actually, as a hockey guy or a hockey lady, you can just go and, like, reading books about football or basketball coaches in university in the States can help give you ideas as a coach about how to run a program as a hockey coach. Now, hockey was different. The roots are different, and hockey was really about coaching. And a lot of old hockey coaches, the reason why it's so hard to find old, great, bright quotes about life and stuff from early hockey coaches, is because it was a demanding, like, some of those people were not nice people, and they didn't run programs. They had players coming up, players with high, and it was kind of like a hard ass kind of, but you can't run a program. That's not a program today. You need a program now so that you can show parents and you can show other constituents, this is how we develop players, this is what we do. And if it's not written down, and if doesn't have some science and some knowledge and some character and some ethics and some principles behind it, then it's not really a program.
Peter Whitney.
Yes, I just wanted to mention how much I love the fact about what was just brought up about really a difference between a team and a program. It's always been one of my goals when I coached to create a program, which is so much more than a team, that when you are done and you move on, like I've moved on, like, one of the things I'm excited about is I think we've created a very good program at Post, where I just left, and seeing that the culture continues and then the success will follow that. Because, like, I always say that, and I think everybody probably says it too, that, it's a byproduct of everything else you do, your success and your wins and losses. And every team I've been fortunate to work with in the past, we've been able to create programs, and that's been one of the most fun and exciting things for me. And so I love that point of, you're successful when you have an actual program that in some ways, provide they're competent. Obviously, it doesn't matter who is coaching that team, but there's a culture that is passed on from upperclassmen to lowerclassmen, and that can just continue on. So I just love that point.
I completely agree, and I like your point about, like, it not only can does it sort of live, but it takes emotional decisions away from the coach. You don't have to deviate from, you've pre-thought of, this is how we're going to handle this if this happens. This is how we'll handle that if that happens. So then when that happens, you kind of go back to your program and say, oh, I'm sorry, but these are the rules, or this is the program, or this is, you're not working on the fly. I would say the number one, that's the biggest thing I find with coaches in hockey, particularly bringing my son up through hockey. My advice usually to coaches is just hand out a page or two on what your program is, so that parents can go, oh, this is, you don't need to surprise everyone with your decisions. You've thought it through. Write it down so that people can understand who you are, what you stand for. And that really helps you when those situations occur and parents aren't guessing. And see, hockey never had these constituents before. It was only the athlete and the coach. So you could coach, but now there's other constituents. Now you need a program.
Right, which I think honestly makes it more fun.
Yes.
Because there's more of a challenge as well too. And if you're someone that likes challenges, I've started a lot of programs, so I guess I fall into that category, as well as starting a business. But if you like challenges, this is actually a pretty exciting time to coach. And I think part of it is, again, is the mentoring piece for younger coaches to have a plan, like you're saying, and not shy away from it. Have something you can give to parents, so you have something as the season goes that you can always refer to. And at times it's okay to disagree, as long as you can support your point and it's a positive point.
That, but it also, a program doesn't need to just solve problems either. It can create opportunities. Like, one of the things that I found interesting at Andrews Hockey in some of the presentations was they talked about the evolution of hockey, and that how you used to want to exclude parents, right? And now you can't exclude parents anymore. They won't let, so now you go, well, how do I include parents? And then, so if you have a program that's like, this is what, and we were talking earlier about getting into the details of like individual skill development and things, like you can have parts of your program where if a parent does want to be involved with their kid, then there can be a line of communication that says, okay, Billy, these 3 things would help Billy a lot. And here's some fun things you can do at home that would have, if you two want to work on those things, then you're really helping Billy. And you don't need, it doesn't need to be negative. So you can opt in and out of different parts of it. Program gives you a lot of flexibility.
Jordan Fenton.
Well, I was just going to say that Bruce's story and mine are kind of the same but opposite, in that Bruce was invited to try out for teams in college, and I've only been asked not to try out for teams in my experience. I was just going to comment, Bruce, on a couple of things here that I really appreciate what you're saying, going back to the passion piece. And I think an early mentor of mine in education said to me that as a teacher, our role is to ignite the passion of learning in whatever subject area feeds a child. And you turn from being a teacher to a facilitator where you learn together. And I think that that's the same piece with our sport, that we need to ignite that passion or take it along to a point where they're pushing their own learning and we're just there to support it. The other piece with it is I know that when you and Sammy were talking about your daughters and their passion for things that maybe were a little different than what yours were, and that's one of the things that as coaches that we sometimes struggle with is the players who are playing for people other than themselves. But as a person that has spent a long time in education, my belief has always been that our role is to create connections. And if you ask even any of us, what was the part of the sport that we missed the most when we had to stop playing? I know Tom has never stopped playing. He continues to play pickup hockey to this day, but it's that social aspect as well. So it's important that we recognize some people it's going to be the connection to the game itself, and some it's connection to the people. And for the most part, hopefully it's both. And so if we create those meaningful connections for our athletes, it takes it to that other level too. I also really appreciate what you talked about with the being evolutionary as a program. I found over the past few years that communication is so important. Of course, in education, we always understood it. That it goes well beyond the 3 formal report cards that got sent home, and mine usually said on it somewhere about how if I applied myself, I'd do much better. But and when my mom read that every single time, I don't know that changed her thoughts, other than wanting to kick me in the butt so that she didn't get that comment that she had to read. But it's the whole piece of I send out a weekly update to my team of what we're focusing on. It's aimed at the aimed at the players, but I know that because it goes on Team Snap, that every parent reads it too, and with the full understanding that communication is to our community, our team community, and that piece. So I really appreciate what you're saying, and I'm looking forward to going back over the bits that I missed while I was out teaching grade 5 and 6 phys ed. But I will looking forward to hearing more.
You know what, Jordan? Those are 2 really, really good points. You know, one in particular, like I think if COVID taught us anything about education, it's just that how much support means, like how much, just how they tried to move everything online, and we had all kinds of this whole world was basically doing educational experiments about, and you know, we end up in this place where it's like, oh, school is not about education. You can get the information. You can get the information online. You can get online courses. You can have Google. You can do. School is about support. There's a human element to this. There's a people element to this, and that you are 100% correct. That like that is a huge part of what sport is. It's people trying to do something together, you know, competing together and competing with each other, and having this blend between cooperation and competition and striving to be better individually, and fitting that within a team trying to do things better. And then how does this whole world work, and it's so much like being immersed in the economy, or being immersed in society as an adult, where you're trying to compete and you're trying to cooperate and you're trying to grow and you're trying to learn, but yet you're a human being with human needs and social needs, and you know, so it's like, really, that's a huge thing, is that there's a people environment going on there that we sometimes forget in this striving to win and striving to develop players.
Jordan, I'm going to go back to you. Knowing why you coach and how you coach is really important. And I think the reason Jordan's very successful at whatever he does, he knows his why. And I'm going to ask Jordan to tell the story of the flat tire Jordan. And to me, that's more important than whether you won or lost the game, that game that your player had a flat tire. Because Jordan's one of the few coaches I know that arrives at the rink before the players most often, but stays till everyone's gone. And go ahead, Jordan. It's your turn to do the flat story. And it ties into the picture Alan Andrews sent out of a 4-year-old kid in Andrews' program carrying his own hockey bag. So go ahead, Jordan.
Thanks, Wally. Well, Wally asked me a question, I think it was last season, about he said, when you were coaching U15, you didn't wait for every player to go home. And did you? And I said, well, no, because U15s don't legally drive themselves to the rink. So with coaching U18s, it's a little different story in that you wanted to make sure that everyone got away safe. And I was reminded of that a couple of times over the past few years of coaching U18. And the first one was, again, as Wally said, was the last one coming out of the rink and made sure that everybody got out of the dressing room. And as I was going out, I saw one of my players, well, I was actually two of my players standing staring at a flat tire on their car. And it was like they were wishing the tire to be inflated or something. I don't know what was going on. So I walked up to them and asked them, so got a little bit of car trouble? And they said, yeah, we've got a flat tire. I said, well, do you have a spare? And the one girl looked at the other, it's your car. She said, I don't know. And the other one said, I don't know. And she said, where would it be? And I said, well, probably in the trunk underneath the floor. And so they threw their gear out of the car, and sure enough, there was a spare there. And I said, well, I'm not changing your tire, but I'll be here to help you make sure you do it safely. And so, okay, they said, what do we need? And we went through the process of changing the tire. I cracked the lug nuts for them and snugged them when they got the spare on. Was the only two pieces I did to it, and off they went safely home, and I thought nothing of it. Well, the next evening, I got a long email from the one girl's father, and he was saying, thank you so much for teaching my daughter how to change the tire. He said, I went and got the flat fixed, and he said, when I brought it home, she wouldn't let me change it. She told me, no, I need to be able to do this. She said, you can sit over there and watch me do it and make sure that I do it right. But she said, I'm going to change it. And he said, it's such a refreshing thing to think that the adults that are engaged in my daughter's life are more concerned or are as concerned about her learning life skills that will go on beyond this. And he just said, thank you for spending the extra time that I know you didn't have to for that, and it meant a lot to her, so a lot to him and to her. So I think that the why of coaching, Wally, yes, going back to it, why is it? It goes back to, I know that there were people who invested their time, effort, and energy in making my life better through sport. And I had one coach back when I was playing U18 that he said to us, if you love this game, if you really love this game and get lots out of it, he said, I just want to make sure that when you have the time to give back to it, that you do. And so it's kind of a legacy piece that I do to honor him, because he did a lot for us back then. He was more like the old school coach, though, that you referred to, Bruce, that there was a lot of old school things that went on, but we also understood that he was there for us. So that's where my why fits in. And when we had our parent meeting last night, player and parent meeting for the start of the season, I hand out my philosophy statement, and right in the very top of it is that hockey is a sport that we use as a vehicle to be better humans, all of us. So that's they understand that right from the get-go, and we're there for development for everybody, not just development of those kids that probably have the highest percentage of getting onto secondary teams later on. It's for the development of everyone.
And Jordan, I wanted to put a plug in for Alan again. He sent a photo, Bruce, which I'm going to share with you. And Al, I may have shared it, Al, a picture of a 4-year-old carrying his hockey bag. And that's one of the things that when I visited Alan and we greeted the kids coming in, and he made a point of kids carrying their own hockey bags. And I've used that at every coaching clinic, because you're teaching them to look after themselves and that kind of thing. And it's just a huge part of the importance of the things outside of the ice that lead to being better on the ice. So I just wanted to make that point, because I think that's the group that we are. and whoever we work with, whether it's adults or students or young athletes, students, uh, we just want it to be an experience that is positive in every way.
Well, that carrying your own sticks and your own hockey bag, Wally, I shared with you as well that if I see U18 age or U15 age players where their parent is carrying their stuff, I'll say to them, I'll outright say that, you know what, when I'm looking for players in character, I want kids that are resilient. And so I tease them a little bit saying, if I see a dad carrying your sticks out of the rink, that tells me that that dad is probably wanting to be too overly involved. And I said, if they're carrying your gear out of the rink, then that means that you probably don't want to be here at all. So, and some of the kids, it makes them think right then and there. And I know that as parents, we want to help our kids out, but as Dr. Alex Russell, child psychologist out of Toronto, said to a group of teachers when he was presenting to us, he said, we can't uh, officially mark on a calendar when it changed from us preparing our children to the path or for the path to us preparing the path for our children. And he said, but he said, it's about the time that helicopter parents terminology came out. And he goes, now, he said, in Canada, we don't have helicopter parents. He said, we have Zamboni parents. He said, not only do they clear the path for their children, but they leave it pristine for them. So it fits right in. And so with our goal of trying to help them be better humans, that resiliency piece is something that we know has to be there when they hit adulthood. And so that's as big a part of our sport, or should be as big a part as teaching skating, teaching puck handling skills, and all of those pieces as well.
Al Ramsey, you've been in the Andrews Hockey School. At what age do you expect kids to tie their own laces?
So we're working with our U10 team now for the kids. Most of the kids are starting to learn to tie their skates. My little fella, he uses my finger. He ties the skates, but I help to hold the laces because they can't. When he does it himself, he likes to do it himself, but when he does, they're not quite tight enough, and he falls in his face. So he gets a finger now, and hopefully by the end of the season he'll be able to do it by himself. But no, I think by the time they get first, second year squirts or 10U, that's about the right time. But I think this is a really good conversation in terms of the resiliency and stuff like that. Like and it kind of, on the flip side of that, I saw a couple of things that happened here recently, with our own team, where it kind of went the other way, because the kids, they all carry their bags by themselves. They're all like we're building competitors, right? And we're building, I think, really good competitors. And one of the things that seems to happen, like with and there's a couple of them in particular, is like when things don't go well, like, we had a game, we were up by a goal, the other team scored with 30 seconds left. This is last Saturday. There's some kids that will beat themselves up over that. And if we're going to build resilient kids, we got to be there to pat them on the back too and tell them it's going to be okay, and tell them to put it behind them. And, we'll come back and practice and we'll figure it out. But sometimes, like, I don't know, sometimes I think they just need a little pat in the back and a reminder that it's going to be okay too. Because they're still little kids.
I wonder how different it is with a pro athlete. Bruce, can you comment? Like, you might take a personal loss that lasts for 24 hours or longer, and you react to it in a mentally tough fashion. And you're expected to respond because you're a professional athlete and you're paid to make a living. That's dealing with youth athletes is a little different, but I'm wondering, is it different, Bruce?
I think that how people respond to losses is different. It's individual, obviously, if you care enough get to a high level, you're probably someone it's going to bother. And I know with, you had to work on letting it go when you're really committed and you're older, and you kind of have to use some different techniques to be efficient about moving on. But I know with my son, in terms of coaching or helping a younger child, I certainly didn't want it to. I wanted him to let it go as soon as possible. There's no, you're a kid. It's just a game, right? And in terms of my advice to him, I remember we were at something called Super Sevens, which is a tournament for 7-year-olds, and the team lost in the finals, and then coach was crying, and a couple of the 3 or 4 of the kids were crying. So he came home, and we're jumping up and down in the trampoline in the backyard, just hanging out. And he's a thoughtful kid. It's like, what? Why were they crying after the game? And I was telling him that, that some people really show how much they care with their disappointment, and they let it impact them emotionally after the contest. I said the time to show how much you care is actually before the contest. It's in the preparation and the work and the attention to detail. That's how a great athlete shows how much he cares. And then when the contest is over, then you should just let it go, because you did your best. You laid it on the line. You tried as hard as you could. It may not mean you performed well, but you tried as hard as you could. And then when it's over, my philosophy was that, man, you let it go. So that was the teaching point for me with that part of it.
That's a really great way to put it, Bruce. I'm gonna steal that, I think, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
That's a really, I love that.
I'm sure someone gave it to me. So.
Well, it's been mentioned you're preaching to the choir. I wanted to relate sort of it's a coaching thing that I try to get across to clinics. And there's so much that's going on with the way coaches coach. It shocks me. And the story I have is a soccer coach speaking to his U17 team at the beginning of the season for the first time, saying to the group, I won 90% of my games last year. I don't expect us to do any worse. I mean, that's his opening message. And I found out about it 3 days later via the grapevine from his parents, and nobody addressed it. Like, I was adamant, because that's something that to me is cardinal. The coaches say that at the beginning of the year to a group of kids, and then I actually watched the coach all year, showing disinterest during the game, texting on his phone, and actually at halftime and the soccer team gathers, the players came and they went by themselves and talked, and then they gathered around him sitting down. So that's not caring coming from a coach. That's so obvious to the players. Now, how you can get into that position, but nobody address it as a parent watching, that's, I think, the issue, that parents are afraid to stand up and speak out in that case for fear it's going to hinder the progress of their daughter. And I say, no, the sooner the coach gets the message. And I'm dealing with that now. That's why I'm doing this session, to prevent that kind of thing from occurring. And I have a saying, Bruce, in sports psych, the athlete has to be in the moment and the coach has to be in the future. So he controls his emotions, realizing how he reacts to situations is going to affect the athletes. So if he loses his cool after a loss and he gets upset on the bench because of a mistake and shows it, you have a lot of negative energy being transmitted. The coach is the leader to try to transmit that positive energy to be the best you can be. And I think we've had a lot of good discussion here. And Brent, you've joined us. I'm sure you're gonna you're back again, and you're driving, I think. Hey, yeah, he is. He's on the road again.
Yeah. Well, I just want to, my phone shut off. I live in a rural area, but I jotted down some key points that I thought were really important, and I learned from our guest today about roles and skills and individual settings. But I took a lot home from the short time I was on at the beginning, and you talked about communication and energy. We run diversity and inclusion courses, but we do it on our ranch, and that's one of the main things is communication and energy. So I just really, I think we run 1,000 people through our ranch, and communication and energy, people pick up on that, and can only imagine what these kids or parents or everybody is we're trying to teach through horses. So I really enjoyed it, but thanks for having me.
Jordan, you had your staff go out and experience that program. And when I was at one of your recent games and Brent was there, we were talking hockey, and he talked to me about his ranch, and he talked about the energy that the horse can read off of you being negative, nervous, angry. And so I did the arm strength experiment with him with a smile and a frown, and of course his arm went down, and it reinforced the effect. To me, I do it at coaching clinics just to try to encourage them to be positive versus react in a negative manner, because the impact of it will definitely hinder peak performance. So Jordan, I don't know what your staff, whether they got that energy thing out of it or not, but was that a part of that day for their development?
Yeah, absolutely, Wally. I've had the opportunity to have our staff there a couple of different times, and they've been had huge takeaways both times on both parts. The equine assisted learning piece, Bruce will appreciate this one. The rule of measure with horses is they can sense energy up to 4 football fields away. So they're obviously very in tuned animals, being technically prey animals, and so they're a herd animal, and that they need each other's connections for survival. And we are very similar in many ways as well. So that energy piece is something they key in on, and it's interesting to watch people who have never been around horses, or people who have been around horses lots in their lives, and understanding and seeing how the energy flow of that day impacts the animals as well as can impact the others as well. And you can see it, and that piece. And of course, us working with a lot of little humans in our elementary school,
we can see how the energy of them or also the energy of us impacts the group and the dynamic. And Wally, I go back to working with athletes, and this is something that I really got more in tune with having you as a mentor. While he was talking about specific positive specific feedback. And when we look at competitions in the game, situations and setting, you can make tweaks, but you usually can't make wholesale changes in a player during a game. That comes in practice time when you're working on that. But what can you do? You can get them to continue to do the things that you saw them do positively. You get them to repeat the positive aspects that they just did. So if you provide positive specific feedback as a child comes off the ice or off the playing surface, it goes a long way. And I've had players that have played for other coaches that they have a little bit of a hard time getting used to only receiving positive specific feedback in games. I've said to them, yeah, I can tell you what you did wrong, but I said, usually I look and see if you already understand or you already recognize that you did something wrong. Like if you did something wrong, the puck ends up in our net and you understand it. Do I need to reinforce that with you? No, I need you to change the channel and be able to go out the next shift like nothing happens, or try harder so that something to counteract that. So those pieces are really really important as well. And I think that positive energy piece is so key in our life. I've often said that the first few days of a school year, if I could bottle up all the energy that comes into a school and sprinkle it out in those later times when we get into the dog days a little bit, that would be awesome. But what it is a great reminder that when those energy times are waning, that we have to work with each other to try and bring the energy up at those times too. So energy flow is a real important thing.
Bruce, while we were talking, Tom texted a request for me to do this energy experiment with his team and parents together. Tom, I'll do it. Just name the place and time and we'll work it out. But I want to tell you about this, Michael. Bruce, pardon me. You've got Michelle on there in your name, Bruce. I'm reading it. It's Michelle's site. So when I was teaching school, I went to teachers convention and I always picked a speaker I liked, the topic that interests me. And there was a human resource officer, main speaker of the day with 1,000 teachers in the auditorium from IBM on energy in the workplace. And I sat beside a former student who played on the national volleyball team. We listened to the presentation together, and if anything had an impact on my life and how I approach teaching and coaching, that presentation did it. And she took us through in pairs the energy experiment where you hold your arm up with a smile and a frown and you test your energy. She had the auditorium darkened with a normal fluorescent light and then a pure light. The strength difference was obvious. And then she explained the theory behind it, the science of energy systems around our body, and talked about the acupuncture points affecting them and what colors create more energy in a workplace, etc. But I took that smile and a frown and that whole exercise back to Hockey Canada, and I did it with the staff that were in my office area. And then I also went to my school and incorporated it into a part of a sports psych grade 10, 11, and 12 curriculum. But it really is something that sort of helps deliver the message of preventing us doing what we're doing and starting to realize how you do get the best results. So, listen, Michael Benelli's been on. I don't know if he's driving or got anything to say, but Michael, can you respond at all before we call it a day? This has been a good one. We might hit the 3-hour mark, but Michael, are you there? Okay. Well, Bruce, I want to thank you so much for your time. You know the group. We'd love to have you on again down the road. I have a guest that's going to be on, Bruce. You might want to join us for it. His name is Ray Paras. He's written a number of books on leadership, and one of his chapters in the book is about the right stuff, right amount, right time, the art of leadership, the art of coaching. And Tim Bothwell has added to that the right way. I'm holding up one of his books. It's called Discussions for Effective Leadership. And inside the cover of the book, he's got some Jim Clemmer and Thomas Wines giving credit to the book. And then he's put in a paragraph about the right stuff, the right amount, the right time, written by me. Coaches must be in the future, but they're to be effective. Progress from yelling to telling to asking. And Tim Bothwell, who's a regular, writes a paragraph about the fourth dimension of leadership and coaching. It's not only the right stuff, the right amount, and right time, but the right way, which describes how to communicate to the players. The right way suggests the coach's tone of voice be calm, clear, and to the point. This cannot happen when they are frustrated. Their voice and body language are critical. They have to be in the future. Players are in the moment. A coach's job is to transmit belief. So I'm going to have some fun editing this. Bruce, if there's anything you want, I record the presentations, I edit them, I set them out to people who might get good things out of them to apply to the good of the game. So if there's anything you don't want me to put out, I won't put it out. I've edited every session. I've taken off stuff from different possessions because different people spoke their mind, forgetting that anybody might be listening to it. But let me know, Bruce, if you're okay with that, and we'll chat again.
Oh, I'm okay with it, Wally. You go ahead.
Okay. Great presentation, Bruce. It was just so good to have you. And I tell you what, you think of anything you want to talk about, and with this group, questions can be asked, feedback can be exchanged. It's only going to be a learning experience. So I don't know if you know the name of our group, but it's called the Sharks. And Tim Bothwell names us the No Dead Sharks. And it comes from the Woody Allen movie. And Woody's asked by his girlfriend, "What do you think of our relationship?" And he says, "Well, it's like a shark. If it's not swimming, it's not breathing, it's not moving forward, it's dying." And that's sort of, we want to keep moving forward and learning. So that's when you receive these shark emails, and Bruce, I'll put you on the list, so you're going to receive more than you have a chance to look at. You might not even listen to it. Who cares? Just put it in a folder to save for a rainy day. But if there's any good that come out of any bits and pieces that we share, we just want to make a difference in having sport do what it's meant to do for society as a whole. So thanks very much.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
See ya.
Goodbye, everybody. We're at 2:54, 19 seconds, and I have to say goodbye. So long.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us, Brett.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day, everyone. Enjoy the rain.
Okay.
See ya.
See you, everyone.